got a lot to talk about with UFOs, so get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. I talk about UFOs and the paranormal. Please hit like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Yeah, this is an awesome UFO capture of this object appearing and disappearing in Utah, captured just on the 29th. Look at this amazing daytime footage from South Jordan, Utah. Look at it. Yeah, it just vanishes. It's just there, and then it's gone. What is this thing? I don't think that's a bird. I don't think that's a bug. I don't think that's a cloud or anything explicable. But hey, let me know if you think this has a mundane explanation, and this object that just keeps on kind of phasing in and out, becoming clearer and stronger and more visible one moment, and then winking out of existence the next. That is just awesome footage. Love it. And thank you for posting that, Ursula. Really cool. Meanwhile, we've got a new article here. Files reveal mystery drones breached airspace around RAF Marham, Britain's frontline F-35 base. This is from Christopher Sharp, of course, at Liberation Times. Great reporting, and I think this is really important information because so much of the mystery drone phenomenon is centered around U.S. assets, military bases, airports, and so on. Of course, it's a worldwide phenomenon, and the unsafe air conditions caused by the mystery drones have caused airports around the world to shut down at various times, and I've talked about that repeatedly. It's obviously a global phenomenon, but you can't deny that it's really centered around U.S. military infrastructure. And that it's caused, in one case, a military base to even relocate fighter jets from one base to another base. It's actually interfering with operations, forcing Wright-Patterson to shut down at one point. It really seems targeted toward U.S. military infrastructure. So when we get a case like this that is, targeting the military outside of the U.S., I think that's really significant. The newly released Freedom of Information responses reveal that the wave of suspected drone incursions hitting U.S. bases across England in November and December 2024 also reached Royal Air Force Base Marham in Norfolk, the Royal Air Force's principal home for its F-35 Lightning jets. On November 26, a guard at RAF Marham, and sorry if I'm butchering these names, guys, rang the base emergency line to say they could see a drone-like light just beyond the runway. Controllers in the tower could see nothing from the visual control room windows, the supervisor wrote, but there were possible contacts spotted in the overhead and around the 01 threshold south of the runway in use. 2 F-35s based at RAF Marham were circling above with only 15 minutes of fuel left, so the duty supervisor checked with nearby RAF Lakenheath and RAF Coningsby, situated in Lincolnshire, in case the jets had to divert. Both bases agreed, but Lakenheath soon called back to say it too was experiencing possible drone activity. Marham's controllers brought the fighters straight into land, steering them past the last reported drone position, and both aircraft touched down safely. The Marham alert was part of a wider scare. From November 20th into early December 2024, U.S.-run RAF Lakenheath, Mildenhall, Feltwall, Fairford logged dozens of similar drone sightings, serious enough to trigger 2 UK government emergency Cobra meetings in Whitehall, and the rapid deployment of extra troops and counter-drone kit to their perimeters. One source with insight into the incidents over RAF Lakenheath, which may now store nuclear bombs, told the Daily Mail in December 2024 that the drones were flying with no lights. When they were close to the site, they were turning on the lights, going, "Here I am." And as far as I know, not one piece of our equipment could bring it down or spot it. In other words, classic mystery drone behavior. They're decked out like Christmas trees. They want to get attention. They are obviously making some sort of point. Nothing can bring them down. It all seems very anomalous, even though they look like drones. Sometimes they sound like drones. Of course, sometimes they sound like helicopters or planes or make no noise at all. Sometimes they'll just vanish from sight completely, very, exotic, very anomalous, more like what you would expect from ET than from man. So, what are these things? In my mind, it's either the control group doing something for some reason, making some point to some other faction, likely within the control group, or it's NHI making some point. Another report from RAF Marham surfaced December 18th. Two F-35s from 617 Squadron, based at Marham, were training in a reserved airspace zone when the pilots spotted three unidentified drones flying between 18,000 and 23,000 feet near Norwich in the Norfolk coast. They radioed the control center with the drones' positions, steered clear to avoid any clash, and then carried on with their mission. Both reports relating to drone activity from RAF Marham were obtained by ex-user and UAP researcher RGH. All right, well, good on you, RGH. Anyway, this is just super fascinating that indeed these mystery drones are targeting a base, a UK base, that is not controlled by the U.S. Of course, the UFO control group is multinational, and of course, England is a part of that. So if it is a message targeted to the UFO control group, just because it's outside of the U.S. does not mean it's not targeted at the UFO control group. But hey, let me know what you guys think. Meanwhile, a mass sighting in Australia on July 30th. Check this out. A lot of people saw this crazy activity. You can see this UFO leaving this smeary trail behind it, as they sometimes do. Is that plasma, as some are speculating? What is that weird smeary trail they leave? I don't know, but it's a great sighting of something that looks pretty darn anomalous to me. Moving on, we've got an article from Defense Scoop. UAP disclosure advocates call for expanded reforms in fiscal 2026 NDAA. A Senate committee draft of the annual defense policy bill includes three provisions that would impact Aero. Okay, well, let's get into these three provisions, and then we'll get into some thoughts from Chris Mellon. These provisions require briefings on UAP intercepts by North American Aerospace Defense Command and U.S. Northern Command. Okay, getting into actual intercepting UFOs. I like it. We know they intercept these things all the time. They shoot at them sometimes. Sometimes they're even able to bring them down. And now they would have to report on that to Aero. I mean, what would Aero do with it? I don't know. Why are we even wasting our time with Aero until you can reform Aero? I don't quite understand the point, but moving on. Another provision would require a consolidated security classification guidance matrix for programs relating to UAP. All right, there's a lot of words there. A consolidated security classification guidance matrix. Okay, so a guide for classifying UFOs. Okay, I think I got that more or less. If you have more insight into that phrasing, let me know. Another provision to require the consolidation of reporting requirements applicable to Aero. Okay, all right. Now we have some statements from Christopher Mellon, who says, in many cases, for instance, Navy ships report UAP sightings from areas where Air Force radars and aircraft operate. But strangely, these systems appear to report no UAP. At the same time, many official UAP reports refer to U.S. fighters chasing UAP over or near the continental United States. Where is that data? If the Air Force fully and properly reported to Aero, then Congress and the American people may even learn of UAP in space or in orbit, said Christopher Mellon. At a time of rapid advancements in drone and aerospace technology for America's adversaries, better domain awareness, including in the space domain, is critical for ensuring the nation's security. Elsewhere in the legislation is a provision that would result in the consolidation of all the disparate reporting requirements applicable to Aero. About that, Chris Mellon said, while we appreciate that the intelligence community and the Pentagon often face redundant reporting requirements to Congress, the matter of UAP is not one of those areas. Okay, well, very good. I will, we'll see what happens with all of that. I think that it's interesting if all of this could be done and Arrow were actually given all of this information. It would be really interesting to see what excuses they then make not to give the American people that information. Maybe they would be compelled to actually tell us the truth about some of this if they were given this information. And hey, maybe that's the point. Then maybe Chris Mellon knows that. So I think this is a really significant potential development, but we'll see what actually gets passed in the NDAA. Some are speculating that the UAP Disclosure Amendment could actually be reintroduced and passed in its robust form. That's right, the Schumer-Rounds Amendment or the Rounds-Schumer Amendment might be reintroduced and passed, but John Greenwald is throwing some cold water on that idea. He says, although I will get slaughtered for saying this, I will absolutely repeat what I've said in the past. This language will likely kill the UAPDA, the UAP or UFO Disclosure Amendment, inclusion in anything. And of course, he's talking about eminent domain. The federal government shall exercise eminent domain over any and all recovered technologies of unknown origin and biological evidence of non-human intelligence that may be controlled by private persons or entities in the interest of the public good. This is a really interesting phrasing. I think this speaks to potential friction between the government-controlled parts of the UFO control group and the private parts. Places like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop, etc., seem to have technology that the government wants, and they want this eminent domain put in there. So the powers behind the Schumer-Rounds Amendment may or may not have any transparency or public disclosure in mind. I hope they do, but they also are including this eminent domain clause or trying to get it included. It's what torpedoed the robust version of the UAP Disclosure Amendment the first time around. Will it torpedo it a second time? John Greenwald is suggesting that, but the insistence on including this speaks to me for that reason, that the government wants what these private companies have. If you read it a different way, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. But we've seen from cases like the JSOC Lockheed Martin firefight over a downed UFO that turned out to be a Lockheed Martin firefight, and there were casualties involved in that conflict. Well, if that story from Jon Stewart and others have seemed to corroborate that, Ross Coulthart point blank asked Jake Barber about it, suggesting that Ross Coulthart places weight on that story as well. If that story is true, that definitely speaks to the friction and the outright violence between the government-controlled aspects of the UFO control group and the private aspects. And this measure, the eminent domain measure, seems, again, to my mind, to be advancing that idea. But let me know what you guys think. Meanwhile, we have to talk about the claims made by Richard Banderick, if I'm saying his name right. He's a really interesting figure, and this story was sent to me by Tim Clark, so thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Who is Richard? Well, this is an old Reddit post, it's 5 months old, about Richard. People have been talking about him for a while because he's said some really interesting things. A few weeks ago, there was a brief interest peak in the claims Richard Banderick made in episode 69 of NASA and DoD-backed Ecosystemic Futures. A full transcript can be read here. In summary, Banderick casually talked about working for classified programs that reverse engineered stuff that wasn't ours. He talks about black triangles that cloak themselves and ET smart materials that disintegrate and reconfigure themselves, among other wild claims. Usually, the Redditor says, I take whistleblowers' testimony for granted because there are usually red flags all over the place or there is some grift attached. This guy is not a whistleblower. He is not part of the UFO community. He made his claims in a scientific setting without even being asked for it. He worked for DARPA. He holds a range of patents for propellantless spacecraft propulsion systems. He uses images of the Carrot craft in his extremely scientific presentations. Okay, let's get into what this gentleman has to say. Yeah, he worked for Lockheed, NASA, ULA, and DARPA.
They were smart materials. Like one of the things is when these materials, you'd be looking at them and you try to reverse engineer them, that they would turn to dust. And they would do it within a minute or two. And then so you could take the dust and then set it off and get the isotopic analysis done on them. And they were extraterrestrial. But these materials, I mean, we're looking at something that's hundreds of years ahead of us. When you look under a microscope or an electron microscope, you're looking at something that's composed of very small particles that seem to be communicating with one another. So those are the things that I've been involved in that we can talk about. But, I think that's one of the reasons why extraterrestrial materials are not really available to most people, is because most of them are set to disintegrate if they get in the wrong hand. Isotopic analysis of the dust that's left behind tells you it's extraterrestrial, at least where it was manufactured. But so we're looking at materials that can reconfigure themselves. They are composed of small subunits. So the type of things I looked at were something as small as a sliver of metal that would reconfigure itself depending on where it was. It would cloak itself and it would try to blend into the environment. So the ones that this one NGO used to get a hold of were the ones that were technically broken. I guess the ones that didn't really function very well. So then you could collect them every once in a while and then try to analyze them. You could do things like split them apart. They would attempt to find each other or reconfigure. Some of the experiments they did was we took one of those and we put it on a very hot surface of about 3,000 degrees. And what it would do is it cooled the surface around itself. And then when we took the device off and then weighted again, we would find that the mass would be reduced by a certain amount.
Do these feel like programmed materials to you, Richard?
Yeah, they were, like I was saying, they're more intelligent materials. Like these subunits probably had computational functionality, right? Because they knew what their neighbors were all about, and they knew they could reprogram themselves to be something different, right? If they needed to change themselves. So these are really curious types of materials. So that's how we could kind of tell they were extraterrestrial, because these things weren't like decades ahead of us. They were probably hundreds of years ahead of us.
That is just super fascinating. So reverse engineering UFOs that disintegrate when you try to examine them and study them. Now, obviously, the UFO control group has UFOs that are recovered in various ways, from archaeological digs or crashes, shoot downs, maybe even gifted UFOs from beings themselves. So, it's interesting that the material that he was given disintegrated. Why don't the whole UFOs disintegrate? Is it only when you take pieces, from them to examine that they then disintegrate? What exactly causes this? I would love to learn so much more about this. I hope he, starts doing podcasts and, gives us more information about this, because this is just an amazingly fascinating slice of science on UFOs. Talks about how the particles could talk to themselves and seem like they're a part of a whole thing instead of just individual particles, and that they had some sort of functionality or some sort of ability to do something independent of each other or as a whole. So just amazing information. Again, I hope he says more about this, because I would love to learn all about it. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Meanwhile, Eric Berles says the cover-up needs to end now. He's talking about UFOs, he's talking about Epstein, he's talking about JFK, but UAPs is right in the center there. So hopefully that signifies that's of interest to him, or of primary interest to him. He says the cover-up ends now. Congress has the power to bring this to light, and we intend to use it. So is he talking about the UAP Disclosure Amendment? What exactly is he talking about? Is he talking about the next UFO hearing? Both together? Something else? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you think about it all in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Hit the bell to be notified of future videos. You don't want to miss a thing. Join me on social media. There's Facebook and Twitter links below. Love to see you guys there. If you want to support Cosmic Road in a bigger way, consider grabbing a coffee mug in the merch store below or becoming a channel member. Channel members are rock stars, and I really appreciate you guys' support. Thank you. Also, channel members frequently get to see videos hours before everybody else. Meanwhile, there's plenty of other videos on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time. This is Jack with Cosmic Road, signing out.